This video is going to be a review of the SVBONY 105. This is my final review for solar imaging with this scope, and also if you wanted to use this thing for birding, because yes, you can use it in terrestrial types of photography because it does give you a correct image that's right side up and not flipped or anything like that. Now, solar astrophotography is surprisingly kind of easy. You just need certain types of equipment. This right here is a glass type filter. It only lets 1 part of light out of every 100,000 photons of light through. So it's a really extreme ND filter. So if you think you're going to use maybe a 5x ND filter to image the sun, I wouldn't recommend that. You really need one of these guys. They reject a massive amount of light. This is like an ND like 600 something filter. And it's specifically designed for looking at the sun. There are also films that you can get, but I don't like films because it's really easy to poke a hole in one of them. Whereas this guy here, he's protected by glass on both sides, so they're much more durable. Now, the one that I have here is an Orion. It's a 4.58 inch aperture type one, and I did have to make a 3D printed adapter to kind of get it to fit on my SVBONY. Now I want to point out kind of a nice little feature of the scope, and that's that the front end of it is smaller than the back end. This large cast piece here, it looks like it's cast aluminum and it's powder coated, is a little bit bigger than the rest of the tube. And with solar astrophotography, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to get the thing pointed at the sun because you can't use a polar scope and you can't just like sight along the thing looking at the sun. Obviously, what I did is I 3D printed this adapter so it was just about exactly the same size as the back end here. And when it casts a shadow that fits exactly all the way around, well, then I know I'm pointed exactly at the sun. And sure enough, when I did in fact look at my image, I was dead on. So this right here is basically about a 1.5 inch spacer. There's actually a threaded hole right here, and this is to put a right angle diagonal in here so that you can use it for visual. It also has M42 threads on it, which your camera can screw onto right here. Now, up here is actually a tension ring, okay, and there's a second set of M42 threads up here. Once you loosen this, it allows you to kind of reorient this thing without actually unthreading it from the scope, so you can get different compositions and so forth. My only complaint with this is that, as you can see right here, it has the ability to kind of dance around inside of this ring. If you're fairly serious about imaging with this thing, what I would recommend is that you get one of these. This is an SVBONY extension tube as well. These are M42 threads, and as you can see right on the back of the scope are M42 threads. And this will give you a solid connection between the camera and the actual scope. Now, you lose the ability to rotate the scope and recompose your images, but I never do that anyways. I mean, every time you rotate the scope, or at least the camera, it means that you've got to redo your flats. Now, I did think at one point, what if I just kind of screw this thing right onto these M42 threads right in the scope? But that's kind of not really plausible, and that's because of the focus knob. Now, the focus knob does come off and leaves just a little brass stub, but then you lose the ability to focus with it unless you kind of really are willing to mess around with the brass stub. Alright, so one of the other pleasant little surprises that I found while kind of tinkering around with this thing was in fact the Vixen Rail that's on the bottom. So, as you can see, there's actually a couple of different places and ways that you can mount it. Now, there are 2 screws that hold it in, but as you can see, there are 1, 2, 3 different positions that it can be moved to, mostly just sliding it forward. I suppose you could flip it around backwards and probably get it right up to here, but you'd be limited to going back as far as the rear end, which is cast. Now, there's also a 3/8 inch threaded stud here and also a 1/4-20. And this, if you were to use this for daytime terrestrial type use, you might want to be moving this thing around and finding kind of the best balance point with your particular camera. Because yes, you can use this thing for visual in the daytime. It's a great spotting scope actually, and if you hook a camera up to it, boy does it give you a long ways away view. Now, if you were to get the itch to use this thing for terrestrial type viewing, whether it be birding or hunting or whatever, yeah, this thing has a 1,350 focal length, which will get you very close to stuff. Now, I wouldn't expect great sharp images for this, not necessarily because of the optics. The optics in this are very good, just because you're going to be shooting through so much air. Atmospheric turbulence is going to make your image kind of soft. This right here is a T2 to 4/3 adapter. It just, you know, as you can see, threads on just like that. And then this guy right here, this is my E1X, as you can see, snaps in place just like so. It's pretty easy to do. And by the way, this thing focuses amazingly close. You can get life-size images with this thing. I don't know if I would kind of consider it a macro lens, but I was kind of blown away at how close I could focus to basically the ground in front of me with this thing. Now, this guy over here, this is a 3D printed shade, and this kind of is necessary if you want to use this for daytime viewing. And it's actually going to bring up really the only optical fault that I have with it, which isn't really an optics thing. It's actually just the baffling, basically, or the powder coating that's on the inside of the tube. What I found is that on overcast days, I got a little bit of hazing kind of in the middle of the image, and what it was is it's a reflection coming off of the inside of the tube, and that could be fixed with just a better type of paint, really, something that's more of a true black, or maybe some knife edge baffles that could be thrown in there. And I know this here shade kind of helped quite a bit with that, and I could probably put some flocking in here as well to even help even more, or maybe even make this thing a little bit longer. I could probably make this tube probably twice as long as it is right now, and I probably will 3D print one. I am going to give you all of the 3D printed objects that are in my videos for this guy. Will be links in below, so you can go ahead and check them out. If you do use this thing for terrestrial photography, you definitely are going to need a tripod, because trying to hold this thing steady is impossible. It's such a long focal length. Now, I'm going to show you some pictures that I took of a pileated woodpecker that's been visiting my stump out here. He is chewing this thing away really fast. That stump's going to be gone soon. But yeah, I was kind of amazed at the pictures I got with this. They're a little bit soft because I am taking pictures through basically 200 feet of raindrops. So, not the greatest images in the world, but it made for some good memories. Now, for focusing this thing, what I like to do is just take one of my fingers and actually manipulate the knob, like so, while I'm holding onto the camera and taking images with the rest of it. That's actually was quite easy to do. It's a little bit kind of fidgety, yes, or I kind of wish I could rotate something on here to make it focus like a normal lens, but that was more of like the habit that I have, you know, because I've used camera lenses for so long. In conclusion here, the little issue that I'd mentioned earlier about this ring, I've actually found a solution for it, and it just involves printing a very thin 3D printed shim, which I'll of course link to down below, and you just slip it inside here and it fixes the centering issue with this particular part. Now, would I buy this scope for solar astrophotography? The answer is absolutely yes, and I'm actually really tempted to do so, but I know Cindy has actually already promised this off to the next guy, so I do have to kind of hand it off to the next guy. But yeah, I will probably add the scope later on to my portfolio, at least for solar work. It's kind of, it's actually a little bit addicting, it's kind of fun to do, and for solar photography, I think this thing is actually a really great buy. Now, for cameras, if you are using a 4/3 sensor with a 4/3 aspect ratio, this guy will frame up the sun or the moon almost exactly, okay? There's a couple times of the year when they're a little bit closer and they might kind of clip at the very tops and bottoms, but pretty much the focal length of this is a perfect marrying to getting the entire thing in there. It's really tight, but it does work, okay? I have an Orion G21, which is a 4/3 sensor, and then I also have a 1600 mm Pro, which is also a 4/3 sensor, and they fit the moon and the sun in there perfectly. Now, if you have an IMX 294 4/3 sensor, that one has a little bit wider and narrower of, or shorter I should say, aspect ratio, and so that one's going to clip a little bit tops and bottoms. So just be aware of that if you have that particular camera and you want to use this for solar astrophotography. Now, for the solar work that I did with it though, I used the 178 mm Pro, which is a very small chip. It's like about 1/3 of an inch in diameter. But this is actually well known for being an excellent camera for solar work, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I used it for the images that I captured with this thing of the sun. And it certainly was fun to do. I kind of enjoyed using it, and I'm actually going to miss this scope.